Hey everybody, this is going to be a little bit of a different video than what I usually do, but recently I've gotten a few questions that are all along the same lines, and I've seen this question for years in different social media groups and on different guitar forums, and it goes something like this. I play X, Y, and Z style music, whether it's blues or jazz or rock or metal, and I want to learn how to play chicken pickin' or country guitar. Do you have a place where I can get started? Do you have a resource for me to start learning? And, you know, I want to be clear up front. This video today is not a lesson. I'm not going to be teaching you how to play those things. I'm holding this guitar because it's a safety blanket. It's a prop today. But what I am going to do with this is hopefully try to answer that question by pointing you in the direction of some of the resources that I personally can attest to being good. Now, I'm going to try to cover a lot of different bases with this, whether you are that person who's coming from a different genre of music, or whether you're new to the guitar and country or chicken pickin' is the thing that you want to learn while learning to play guitar. I'm also going to have a section with supplemental material, so maybe you already play country guitar and you're just looking for a place to pick up new stuff. And I'm also going to go over some essential listening and a few other things that I think will be fun. That being said, if you go down to the timeline or the description of this video, you should see skippable sections that hopefully you can use to jump to whatever area you are most interested in or might be most applicable to you. However, I feel like if you watch this whole video, you're probably going to get something from it regardless of where you are in your learning journey. The other thing that I want to mention with this is this whole video is not meant to be comprehensive and it's not meant to be exclusive. What I mean by that is I'm just talking about material that I can personally attest to being of quality. That doesn't mean that there is not other stuff out there that is just as good, if not better. It's just this is what I'm familiar with and what I can recommend. That being said, if you're watching this video and you already play country guitar or chicken pickin', or you're on your way to learning it and you have a recommendation that you feel is really good that I haven't included, please leave it in a comment down below, because my goal, my hope with this is that when someone asks this question in the future, that you can share this video and that the person who's watching it can not only gain information from what I'm saying, but that they can go in the comments of this video and look at what other people are recommended and really get a great variety of different material for them to try out, for them to explore, or for them to learn from. So I hope that this is going to do that. I hope that this is going to be helpful for everybody. Now, before we move on to the first section, I do want to make it very clear. This video is not sponsored by anybody or any company that I mentioned during the course of this discussion. Nor have any of my previous videos on my entire channel been sponsored by anybody or any company that I mention here. In the future, if any of these companies or people become sponsors of my page, just please understand that as of the date of the publishing of this video, no one has paid me to say anything on here. Everything that I'm talking about is based on my personal experience and my just kind of sifting through material, trying to come up with some good suggestions for you guys. All right, everybody, so the first category that I'm starting with, I'm specifically talking to the folks who I mentioned before, the people who are coming from a different genre, whether it be blues or whether it be rock or whatever, and you want to learn country guitar. You already have a foundation, you are already able to play songs, you just want to get the techniques and the sensibility about what this style is. And the first thing that I'm going to recommend, this stuff is sort of foundational, getting your brain wrapped around it, and I can't think of a better lesson than the one that Johnny Hiland came out with about a month ago as of the release date of this video on TrueFire. Now, it's called Johnny Hiland 10-gallon guitar from shed to stage, or shed to stage. And what Johnny's teaching in that course is basically how to think about and approach guitar solos. He gives you some different methodologies and some ways to really kind of picture and think about the fretboard. And this kind of stuff is what's going to get you on the path to eventually be able to improvise in this style and play over changes and do all of the stuff that you, I guess, want to do if you're watching this video. And Johnny's going to explain it in a way that's going to make sense regardless of whether you are a music scholar or not. And that's what I really love about this particular course that Johnny put together. You know, I think too many times we might get overwhelmed with material that we look at and give up before we get started. And you're not going to do this with, you're not going to do that with this particular course. Johnny's going to kind of break things down and explain it and demonstrate it in a way that I think regardless of your skill level, you're going to get this under your fingers pretty quickly. Sticking with the TrueFire stuff for a second, I'm going to kind of continue down this path of people coming from different genres into the country realm and suggest Jason Laughlin's country guitar survival guide stuff. Now, Jason has done a lot of lessons on TrueFire and elsewhere, but I'm going to just focus on the country guitar survival guide stuff. There's a rhythm course and there's a lead course. And I think unlike other material online, Jason really breaks down each solo that he teaches and each rhythm idea that he teaches down to a fundamental level, and then shows you sort of how you can use it within the structure of a song, which I think is missing in a lot of other courses. And it's what I really like about how he approaches the guitar in those particular two courses. Now, Johnny Hiland, who I just mentioned, also has a rhythm course and a lead course that I'm going to talk about later. I think it's better described as supplemental material as opposed to sort of a foundational thing, because I really think that the shed to stage one is where it's at if you're coming from a different genre and coming cold to country. So I'm going to leave you with those two. I do want to give an honorable mention here, and it's specifically to an individual named Doug Seven. Now, for those of you who have been around the guitar YouTube world for a while, you might recognize that name and you might be familiar with his material. He used to put out quite a bit of country guitar educational stuff for free. And I can attest to the quality of that. Now, recently, Doug has moved over to a subscription-based paid platform, which I think is great. However, I can't recommend it only because I myself haven't checked out the material that he's put out on that platform. I'm sure it is good because the material he used to put out was very high quality and very educational, but I just can't recommend it without actually having tried it before. But he's sort of this in-between for me because I am familiar with his work, so I do feel comfortable at least mentioning his name in this category of stuff. If you have any familiarity with the subscription-based stuff and the material he's been putting out recently, please leave a comment down below. I would love to hear your opinion on it. I would love to get a little bit of feedback, and maybe we can include him in the description of this video as a recommendation after people chime in. All right, moving on to the next category. These are the people who I would refer to as the true beginners. You are new to guitar and you want to learn how to play country music and chicken pickin'. My caveat to this, though, is if you're watching this and you're not new to guitar, stick around for this section since you're already watching it, because there's going to be material that I'm going to suggest that I think is going to help you regardless of your level of experience, whether you are someone who is coming from another genre of music or someone who's been playing country music for 20 years. This material is still going to be helpful. Now, the first thing for the true beginner that I'm going to suggest is that you go to Levi Clay's website. Now, Levi is an English guitar player who is fantastic in a lot of different genres, and one of those genres is country guitar. Levi has a lot of published work. most of it being instructional material. And I suggest you go to the link on his website specifically for the beginner country guitar course. And I think it's about a $20 book. He sells it through Amazon. And that is going to give you the fundamentals of like chords and some basic scales, and kind of ties in some rudimentary rhythm stuff, and gives you, I think, a real good foundation for not just learning country, but putting into the context of just learning guitar in general. Now, while you're there, while you're on Levi's website checking things out, even if you're not a beginner, I would suggest also finding Levi's 3-book compilation on country guitar methods. And that is, I think, going to be a more comprehensive, not just for beginners, approach to playing country guitar. Again, this is like a full frame methodology that you can use to wrap your brain around how to play this genre, and kind of dives into a few subgenres while he's there. Levi does a really good job of holding your hand and walking you down the path of playing country guitar from a beginner to advanced. And regardless of where you are on that spectrum, you're gonna get something from this material. He does a fantastic job of explaining what it is that he's trying to teach in that written material. It's wonderful. It really, really is. Now, the second thing that I'm going to recommend in this category is Guthrie Trapp's Artistworks series. Now, this is a subscription-based series. Artistworks is similar to TrueFire in certain ways and different in other ways. But for you, what I am going to suggest is, if you're a true beginner, Guthrie starts kind of from the ground up with a guitar approach that I think is suitable for beginners. However, if you're watching this right now and you're not a beginner, still check out Guthrie's Artistworks page, because just like Levi, Guthrie's going to start at the ground floor, but he's going to work his way up to teaching you really advanced guitar technique and country guitar technique. For those of you who aren't familiar with Guthrie, he is one of those Nashville heavy hitters. He's one of those guys that he comes from the Don Kelly tree, and he's an absolute monster of a guitar player, and his educational material really backs up what he does. And again, while it starts from a very basic level, it doesn't stay there. I will say this, the Artistworks material is fairly expensive compared to a lot of the other stuff that I'm suggesting. Now, I'm not saying that to discourage anybody, but I do want to put that caveat on there that it might not be within everybody's budget like some of this other material. It's not a $20 book. However, if you start with this, you will be a good guitar player by the time you finish, so long as you stick with it. So it's an investment in your playing. It's a really good investment in your playing, in my opinion, if you're looking for a comprehensive course and you might be starting as a beginner, you might not be starting as a beginner. Definitely check it out. Now, I want to mention something here at the end of this category that I think is applicable to both this group and the previous group, and that is that specifically Jason Louglin, Johnny Hiland, Levi Clay, and Guthrie Trapp all offer online private lessons over Skype or Zoom. Now, the reason that I'm mentioning that is because, unlike some other educational material that's out there, you can, if you get stuck somewhere, say you're going through Levi's course, his books, and there's a page or two that you just can't wrap your brain around, you can actually contact Levi and ask for help. You can set up a lesson with him and ask him your question over Zoom or over Skype and say, hey, you know, this one part didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. Can you walk me through it? And he will. And I think that that is such a great resource because, you know, I know for me sometimes, especially when I was younger and trying to figure out some of these concepts, I didn't have that available to me. So having the ability to reach out to these guys and set up a lesson It will cost money, but in a lot of cases, it's gonna get you over something that maybe you previously would have been stuck on. And even if you've gone through those courses 100% and you understood all of it, it might still be worth setting up a lesson with those guys and seeing what they have to show you, because you know, they are masters of what they do. So just kind of throwing that out there before we move on. Moving on to the next section here, this is a category that I'm going to call supplemental material. And unlike the previous categories that were like complete approaches or methodologies, or you know, maybe frameworks within which to study or couch your playing, this supplemental material is more people who might teach singular ideas or specific licks that once you have your framework, once you have that foundation, you can use this supplemental material to kind of you know, bring in new stuff and put it within your playing, or you know, maybe guide you down the path of a way of playing that might be a little bit more you. And I'm going to start this by just kind of reiterating a couple things that I pointed out in the previous section. Specifically, if you remember me mentioning Johnny Hiland and his TrueFire stuff. Now, the shed to stage is going to be a methodology, a framework within which you can think, but if you go to Johnny's other 10-gallon guitar lessons, he's got something on rhythm guitar, something on lead guitar, and I think he's got like an intros and outros as well. That kind of stuff is going to be great to supplement the foundation you got through the shed to stage lesson plan. Or, you know, if you go with any of the others, you can kind of pick and choose with those other sections and just sort of put them together in a very cool way. So definitely check those out. I think Johnny is one of the great country guitar and chicken picking teachers out there. He is pretty prolific with the way that he approaches the guitar to begin with, but he also breaks it down in a very digestible way that you can really incorporate a lot of that stuff into your playing. The next supplemental material that I'm going to mention is my buddy Zane Banks. His YouTube channel, I think, is great for picking up licks and ideas. Zane is really good with like the lick of the day type stuff and showing you certain ways to approach a solo with different transitions. And you know, if you have that foundation, if you have that framework, go subscribe to Zane's page, because he's going to give you some really creative, very fun ideas that you can kind of just work into the playing that you're already doing. And he's an excellent teacher, and he breaks things down really well. And he is really consistent with his content, which is important if you're on this path of trying to learn how to play this style. Sticking with the supplemental material here for a little bit longer, I have to mention something that if you're of a specific age, or a certain age rather, you probably remember something called hot licks, the VHS tapes that maybe you were into them, maybe you saw them in the guitar store and you passed over them. If you don't know what I'm referring to, years ago, a guitar player named Arlen Roth gathered a large number of some of the best guitar players of that time and had them do instructional tapes, like literally VHS tapes at the time, that have since been converted into DVDs and online material. But Arlen, who is a great guitar player in his own right, among these guitar players, he gathered chicken pickers and country players, guys like Danny Gatton, Albert Lee, again, Johnny Hiland, Brent Mason, and I list those four guys because those are the hot licks that I have gone through. The Danny Gatton ones are especially amazing. Now, Danny's not going to teach you how to play guitar as a beginner in his videos. However, again, talking about supplemental material, Danny Gatton has one called Telemaster and one that I don't remember the name of it specifically, but it's basically kind of jazzing up your country playing. I'm going to put it up here on the screen if it hasn't been up already. But for those of you who aren't familiar with Danny Gatton, you are missing out, and he played some amazing stuff, and it's on those videos, and you can really lift a lot of those licks and work them into what you're doing for something that is going to just sound fantastic. And if you go and research sort of the lineage of players who came out of the Danny's Gatton School of Playing, you'll understand why that specific supplemental material is so fantastic. But again, Hot Licks, Brent Mason did one, and Brent's is again wonderful. Now I am gonna warn you that these Hot Licks videos, you need to have a foundation first before you dive into them, because Brent is gonna start at 10, and you're gonna learn a lot if you can understand what they're talking about and follow along. I suggest that whatever you're playing them on has the feature to be able to slow stuff down. However, I think they have since reissued the Hot Licks in like large book formats with the videos. That is what I would go for, because if it's tabbed out for you and you can read along, follow along, and just sort of slow everything down, you are gonna get so much from watching those guys when they were in their prime and teaching you what they were doing. So definitely recommend the Hot Licks stuff. If I can find links to them for sale right now being reissued, I'm gonna put them down in the description. Staying in line with Brent Mason for a minute, I highly recommend that you get the tab book of Brent Mason's Hot Wired album. A few years back, a number of years back, they put out basically a start to finish tablature book of all of the songs off of Brent's Hot Wired album, including Gator Bite and Hot Wired, which are chock full of chicken pickin' licks. One of the ways that I learned this style was going through and learning actually Brent's solos start to finish from that album and from like Alan Jackson songs and that kind of thing. And I would suggest that once you have your foundation, start diving in and learning these solos, because you'll start kind of seeing patterns and understanding why guys like Brent Mason move around the fretboard the way that they do, how they do it, and you can really start to improvise using the same methodologies that these guys do once you have their solos under your fingers. So definitely would suggest that, as well as great supplemental material. Staying in line with this supplemental material for a minute, there is another YouTube channel that I think is a must for anybody who wants to learn more about playing guitar in this vein that we're talking about. It's Tom Bukovac's YouTube channel. And for those of you who aren't familiar with him, pause this video right now, go to Google and just search for him, read up on him a little bit, and you'll understand he is one of the heavy hitters in Nashville, and for good reason. And a while back, he kind of started putting videos up on YouTube, and they are very specific topics that he chooses to talk about with guitar and with gear and other things. And it's really gonna help you, I think, kind of nail down some really fun and interesting ways to approach very specific things with your playing, but it's definitely fits right in with what we're talking about with the supplemental material. So that's another one. I'm gonna link it down below. Tom Bukovac's YouTube channel. It's fantastic. Now I'm gonna throw you a curveball with this next one. Sticking with supplemental material, it's not straight ahead country, but it's going to get the creative juices flowing for your country guitar solos and for your playing in general, and that is Red Volkart's educational material. Specifically, I'm gonna put up the TrueFire stuff that Red did. Now, if you're not familiar with Red, this is another time when I'm gonna just say pause the video, just do a Google search for him. Another amazing player. And Red is really known for being, having really swing sensibility, Western swing, jazzy type country stuff. And, you know, that sort of thing, if you can get it under your fingers with your country guitar playing, is really going to help add another layer, another element to what you do. So even though it's not straight ahead country and not straight ahead chicken picking, I would challenge you to kind of, once again you have your foundation, to start working that stuff in, and you can go down that path, sort of having Red be your entryway into that stuff. And I can't think of a better person to sort of hold your hand and take you down that path than the great Red Volkart. Okay, so this next category, I'm just gonna call it essential listening. Now, please, if you are watching this and you're a fan of country guitar or chicken pickin', understand, this is not a comprehensive list. This was me sitting down with a pencil and pad and just jotting down, taking 20 minutes to think of everything I could think of off the top of my head. This is a section, if you're familiar with this genre, where I would love your help in the comments. If I didn't include something on here, I deeply apologize. It wasn't intentional. There's just no way that I can cover all of the essential listening for an entire genre, but I did my best with trying to cover a lot of the stuff that, at least for me, inspired me or got me started when I was in a rut or when I was first learning. You'll see this list again in the description, so that way you can just sort of copy and paste into a search engine and try to find this stuff to listen to it on your own. All right, so the last category here, I've got one recommendation, but again, I would love some help from other people. This category I'm gonna put into a non-guitar lesson category, which kind of seems strange because we've been talking about guitar lessons the whole time. But for those of you who are interested in the chicken pickin' country guitar community, I highly recommend going over to my buddy Zach Child's page on YouTube and subscribing. Zach doesn't really give guitar lessons on his page, but he talks about a lot of the historical context in which the songs we love or the musicians we love fit, as well as kind of does deep dives into certain iconic pieces of gear and certain just things that are very country guitar and chicken pickin' oriented. So, you know, I think that if you follow that page, you might not get a guitar lesson out of it, but it's going to help you kind of put into context a lot of the stuff that you might be learning from those other resources. And I think that's very valuable to kind of know the history behind some of the stuff that you're playing. So I included Zach Childs in this. Again, his page is called Ask Zach. It is absolutely wonderful. But I would love to hear from you guys in this category again about what other resources, books, movies, documentaries, what you think is kind of a non-guitar lesson essential for people who want to get into this genre. All right, everybody, so this should pretty much wrap up the video. Again, it wasn't meant to be comprehensive. I know there's no way that I can cover everything in this. If you watched this as someone who teaches country guitar, or if you watch this as someone who has a platform, either online, book form, whatever, and you felt like I didn't include you intentionally, I promise you it wasn't intentional. I sat down and honestly tried to come up with a list of material that I have used or that I have looked at or that I have gotten inspiration from, and it's not in any way targeting any other person or group of people. That being said, if you are one of those folks, please leave a comment down below and recommend yourself or recommend other people who you feel represent the community, represent guitar playing and country guitar and chicken picking very well. I would love to have the comment section filled with other recommendations so that when people find this video in the future, they can scroll down and they can look until their heart is content and just get a ton of inspiration so they can get started on their journey, or they can get re-inspired on their journey to play country guitar.